Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak Up. It seriously means a lot that you're here. Whether this is your first time listening or you've been hanging out with us for a while now, thank you. We know there are a million things pulling your attention every day. So the fact that you're taking this little pocket of time just for yourself, to reflect, to grow, to be part of a conversation, it's honestly powerful. And today, we're diving into something that's not always fun to admit, but it's real. That inner battle of showing up when you don't feel like it. We're talking about how to force yourself to be consistent, not in some motivational, flashy way, but in a quiet, grounded, practical way. Because let's be honest, anyone can start. The hard part is sticking with it.
Exactly. And the reason we wanted to have this conversation today is because being consistent, whether it's with your goals, your habits, or even just your daily routines, it's something we all want, but most of us secretly struggle with. You might start with energy and excitement, but then a week goes by, life gets busy, you lose momentum, and suddenly you're back where you started. And that cycle, it chips away at your self-belief over time. So today's episode is about being honest with ourselves, about exploring what it really takes to push through that resistance and how to stay with something even when motivation disappears. If that sounds like something you've needed to hear, stay with us. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next.
Let's first understand something that trips almost everyone up. This idea that we're supposed to feel ready every time we want to take action. Like somehow if we don't feel inspired or motivated or clear-headed, then it's not the right time. But honestly, that's not how life works. Most of the time, you won't feel ready. And if you keep waiting for the perfect mindset or the perfect mood, you'll keep delaying the things that actually matter. That's been a huge realization for me. Knowing that the not feeling like it part isn't a red flag. It's just normal. So instead of asking, do I feel like doing this today? The better question is, can I still do it even though I don't feel like it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of us grow up with this kind of silent belief that consistency should feel good. Like once we build a good routine, we'll automatically enjoy doing it every day. But in reality, even the best routines, the ones we chose because they align with who we want to be, can still feel like a burden. It doesn't mean the habit is wrong or that we're failing. It just means we're human. There will always be days when it feels heavier. The key is expecting that resistance instead of being surprised by it. Because when you expect it, you're not discouraged by it. You're just like, okay, here it is again. Let's go anyway.
And when you shift your mindset like that, from expecting ease to expecting resistance, things start to change. You stop searching for the spark and start focusing on the action itself. For me, it's been about lowering the pressure. I don't need to feel amazing. I just need to begin. And most of the time, once I start, even just a little, the resistance fades. Not always completely, but enough that I can move forward. It's like dragging your feet through wet sand at first, but then you get your rhythm. You stop fighting it.
I love that image, dragging your feet through wet sand. That's exactly what it feels like some days. But the truth is, we don't need to win the whole battle in one go. We just need not to give in to that voice that says, skip it today. And the more times you push through that feeling, the more proof you collect. Proof that you can do it even when it's uncomfortable. That proof adds up, and it becomes part of how you see yourself, not as someone who waits for perfect conditions, but as someone who moves anyway.
Let's talk about something most of us never even question. This idea that we need to feel a certain way before we act. Like, if I'm tired or annoyed or just not in the mood, then that means it's not the right time to do the thing. But what if that connection between how we feel and what we do is actually optional? Like, what if they don't need to match at all? I've started reminding myself that I'm allowed to feel whatever I'm feeling, but the action still happens. Because otherwise, every time my mood drops, my consistency disappears with it. And honestly, that's not sustainable.
Totally. And I think we sometimes overvalue our moods, like they have the final say. But they don't. You can be exhausted, unmotivated, totally uninspired, and still do what you said you would. It's such a powerful shift when you realize that feelings are just temporary weather. They come and go. But the action, that's what sticks. That's what shapes your identity over time. So when I feel low energy or disconnected, I try to tell myself, this feeling is allowed to be here, but it doesn't get to control my choices.
That's such a good way to say it. The feeling is allowed, but it doesn't get to run the show. And here's something that really helped me. I started repeating this phrase in my head when I feel resistance. I say, it doesn't matter how I feel, I'm still doing it. It sounds harsh at first, but it's not. It's actually kind, because I'm separating myself from the chaos of my emotions. I'm not fighting the feeling, I'm just stepping around it. And over time, that little phrase becomes a doorway into action.
Yes, and you don't need to be cold or robotic to detach from feelings. It's not about ignoring your emotions. It's about seeing them clearly and then choosing anyway. I think we've all had those days where we followed through on something despite how we felt, and afterward there's this weird peace, like, wow, I didn't feel like it at all, but I still showed up. That moment builds trust with yourself, and I think that's where real consistency begins. Not in feeling good all the time, but in being willing to move anyway.
Exactly. The irony is, the more you practice this, the less power your mood actually has over your decisions. Like, you start to see that your tired days, your anxious days, your bored days, they're not the enemy. They're just part of the background. And you stop needing to solve every feeling before you take action. You just do the thing. Some days it's smooth, other days it's rough, but the action stays consistent. And that's what creates momentum.
And that momentum, that's where your life starts to shift. Not because everything suddenly feels easier, but because you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop needing perfect conditions. You get up, you do the work, and you move on. That kind of simplicity, it's freeing. And it takes practice, yes, but once you learn to separate your feelings from your actions, you realize how much power you've been handing over to your moods, and you start taking it back.
Let's be honest, we all have a tendency to overcomplicate things, especially when we're starting something new. We think if it's not perfect, it doesn't count. So we build this super detailed plan in our head, and then the first day we feel tired or behind schedule, boom, the whole plan falls apart. That's where I had to pause and ask, what's the version of this habit that I could do on a terrible day? Not the ideal version, the minimal, simple version. Because if my plan only works when life is calm and energy is high, then it's not a reliable plan.
That's such a good way to look at it. Designing for your worst days, not your best. And it's kind of funny how we trick ourselves. Like, we think more steps equals more progress, but actually, more steps equals more friction. The more complicated something is, the easier it is to skip. So now I always ask myself, what's the simplest version of this that still counts? Not impressive, just doable. Because if my plan only works when life is calm and energy is high, then it's not a reliable plan.
And you know, I used to think simplifying was the same as lowering my standards, like I was giving up or slacking. But actually, it's the opposite. Simplifying means you're serious. You're building something that can survive real life. So instead of planning to journal for 30 minutes every night, I started with just one sentence, one line. And if I felt like doing more, great, but I didn't have to. That little shift made it way easier to show up, even when I was drained or distracted.
I love that. Making it so small you can't say no. I've done the same with my routines. I don't plan for an hour of focus anymore. I just say, okay, 5 minutes. That's it. And half the time, I end up doing more. But even if I don't, I still win because I showed up. And that minimum version, that default habit, it becomes your safety net. It keeps you in motion even when everything else feels heavy or chaotic.
Exactly. That's the part people miss. It's not about always doing the maximum. It's about never breaking the chain. When you have a simple default, you don't get stuck in guilt or perfectionism. You just do your thing and move on. And honestly, the more I commit to that low pressure version, the more consistent I become. It's like taking small steps every day without tripping over your own expectations.
And consistency without pressure, that's where real growth hides. Because now the habit doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like something I can do, even on my worst days. And when you realize that your progress doesn't need to be dramatic or flashy, it just needs to be steady, everything softens. You start trusting yourself more. You stop giving up. And most importantly, you stay in the game.
Now that we've understood how having a simple default helps us stay consistent, let's talk about something even more powerful: deciding once, not daily. See, one of the biggest mistakes I used to make was leaving space for debate. Every morning I'd ask myself, should I do it today? And most days, that question became the reason I didn't follow through. But when I started deciding just once, the time, the place, the method, everything changed. I didn't have to think about it anymore. I just followed through. No negotiation.
Yes, that's so relatable, Ryan. I used to think I needed to feel ready every day in order to follow my routine. But feelings change. What works better is commitment. When I decided that I'm going to study English for 30 minutes every evening at 8 p.m., that decision removed all the mental back and forth. I didn't have to wonder anymore. 8 p.m. came, they showed up. No debate, no convincing. It became automatic.
Exactly. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't wake up every day and ask, should I brush today? You just do it. When habits become non-negotiable, they become part of who you are. And honestly, that's where real fluency or growth comes from. Not big, dramatic effort, but quiet, consistent repetition. Every day, same time, no drama.
And it actually brings so much peace, doesn't it? Once I removed that daily struggle, my brain had more space to focus on the task itself, not whether or not I was going to do it. And even on days when I was tired or unmotivated, I still followed the plan because I had already made the decision. And that builds trust in yourself.
That's the magic, Priya. It's not about feeling inspired. It's about removing that exhausting inner debate. Decide once, lock it in, and then just follow the path you already created for yourself. It may sound simple, but honestly, it's a game changer. It frees up your energy and makes habits feel lighter.
Yes, and in the long run, it's those locked-in decisions that shape who we become. You don't have to wait for motivation. You just need to remove the daily question mark. And when your habits are locked into your day, like appointments, that's when real lasting transformation begins.
Now that we've seen the power of removing negotiation, let's go even deeper. Let's talk about identity. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about checking off a task. It's about who you're becoming by doing it. When I started telling myself, I am someone who shows up even when it's hard, it changed how I saw myself. It wasn't just about finishing a workout or studying English. It became a statement about my character.
That's such an important shift. For a long time, I was chasing outcomes like speaking English fluently or finishing a big project. But I realized the real change came when I focused on identity. I started seeing myself as someone who is consistent, someone who keeps promises to herself. And every time I showed up, even when it was difficult, I felt that identity becoming stronger.
Exactly. The task itself can be small, like showing up for 10 minutes or writing one paragraph. But the real win is what it tells your brain. It says, I'm reliable, I'm disciplined, I follow through. And slowly, that becomes your self-image. That's where confidence is built, not from outcomes, but from small, consistent acts of self-respect.
Yes, and you begin to notice that your actions are no longer random. They're part of your story. Like, I'm not just someone trying to learn English. I am an English learner. I'm someone who speaks every day, who learns new words, who keeps improving. That identity creates energy, even on low motivation days.
It's powerful because once your identity shifts, your behavior naturally follows. You don't have to force it. If you believe I'm someone who shows up no matter what, then when life gets hard, you still show up. You're no longer acting out of pressure. You're acting out of who you are.
And that's what makes the difference between a short burst of effort and lasting change. The task might seem small, but every time you follow through, you're proving to yourself who you really are. And that's how habits turn into identity. That's where real growth lives.
All right, so now that we've understood how identity shapes behavior, let's talk about something crucial, closing all escape routes. Because here's the truth. If quitting is on the table, your brain will flirt with it, especially on tough days. That's why we need to remove every excuse, every backdoor.
Exactly. One thing that really helped me was setting up accountability, like telling a friend or committing to my audience or even putting reminders in my room. It's not about being perfect. It's about making it easier to stay on track than to give up. The more friction you add to skipping the habit, the more likely you are to follow through.
Right. For me, I made it a rule that I don't negotiate with my feelings, and I don't leave options open. I set a clear routine, I removed distractions, and I made the default behavior the one that aligns with my goal. It's like telling your brain, this is who we are. There is no plan B.
And honestly, when you remove the option of quitting just for today, everything becomes simpler. You don't spend energy debating, you don't wait for motivation, you just show up. That consistency creates power, it creates momentum, and it builds a mindset that doesn't break easily.
Exactly. Discipline isn't about being strict. It's about being clear. Clear that you're not here to dabble, you're here to grow. And when quitting is off the table, even your hardest days become manageable. You stop asking if you'll do the work and just focus on how you'll get it done.
So let's bring this full circle. Whether it's separating feelings from action, building identity, simplifying the process, or closing escape routes, it's all about making progress without needing to be perfect. One small action at a time, over and over, even when you're tired, even when it's hard. That's what builds the version of you that you truly want to become.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for staying with us. If this helped you in any way, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing it with a friend who's on their own journey. We're here to grow, together. Stay consistent, stay kind to yourself, and we'll see you in the next one.